Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving into a massive tectonic shift that's happening right in front of us, and that is the totally new trajectory of modern warfare. We're going to trace how the grounded physical battles dominating today's headlines are actually quietly propelling us into the invisible, digital, and economic battlegrounds of 2026. Because honestly, this isn't just about armies anymore. It's about the very networks that power your daily life. It's a huge shift, and by the end of our time together today, you're going to have a crystal clear understanding of how all these seemingly isolated global events actually connect into one coherent picture. To set the stage, let's kick things off with a number that is, frankly, pretty staggering: 10. Right now, independent monitors like the International Crisis Group are tracking exactly 10 major global conflicts. Now think about that historically for a second. We aren't talking about minor, isolated skirmishes here. These are active, highly volatile flashpoints burning simultaneously across the globe. And every single one of them has the potential to drastically reshape international security this year. It is just an unprecedented level of global friction.
So here's our roadmap for making sense of all this. First, we'll look at the Gaza war into 2026. Second, regional spillover and escalation. Third, 2026 biggest global flashpoints. Fourth, how tech is transforming modern warfare. And fifth, weaponizing the global economy.
All right, let's jump right into part one, the Gaza war into 2026. To really grasp where global warfare is at in 2026, we have to ground ourselves in the most heavily documented ongoing conflict right now, which is the war in Gaza. The lessons and the consequences coming out of this localized epicenter are just rippling outward. Let's trace how this actually evolved. It all began back in October 2023 following the Hamas attacks on Israel, which kicked off a really grinding, multi-phased urban war. Fast forward a bit to May 2025, and the Israeli military launched Operation Gideon's Chariots, a major strategic offensive. By October 2025, things shifted again when both sides agreed to phase one of a US-backed peace plan, bringing a formal ceasefire into effect. But, the geographic reality on the ground was already permanently altered. By December 2025, the Israeli-controlled Yellow Line was established. That's a physical boundary that left roughly 53% of the Gaza Strip under Israeli military operational control.
Now, the sheer physical scale of destruction from this localized warfare it's almost hard to wrap your head around. Researchers estimated that as early as January 2024, up to 62% of buildings across the entire Gaza Strip had already been damaged or destroyed. Take a second to process that, 62%. We are talking about a totally unprecedented modern infrastructure collapse. To put that into perspective, that percentage approaches the kind of total, devastating destruction we haven't really seen since the major cities of World War II.
And behind that staggering loss of infrastructure is the really grim human reality of fighting in densely populated cities. When you look at the independent United Nations demographic analysis for casualties verified in residential buildings, the impact on civilians is vastly disproportionate. The data shows that 44% of those casualties were children. Another 26% were women, and 30% were men. It's a deeply sobering metric, and it really underscores the indiscriminate toll that modern, concentrated urban warfare takes on everyday civilian populations.
Which brings us to Section 2, regional spillover and escalation. Because here's the thing, conflicts like this rarely stay contained. Instead, this tragedy acted like a spark in a powder keg across what geopolitical experts are now calling the Middle East Triangle. It's basically a classic cause and effect chain reaction. The initial conflict spilled straight into the Red Sea, triggering significant Houthi attacks that really messed with vital global shipping lanes. At the same time, it escalated up north, locking Israel and Hezbollah into ongoing wars in Lebanon. All this continuous regional tension essentially acted like a giant pressure cooker, and that eventually triggered the massive June 2025 12-day war, which saw unprecedented direct strikes between Israel and Iran. Ultimately, this entire chain reaction culminated in a major US and Israeli war on Iran in February 2026. So it started as a localized epicenter, completely cascaded into a full-blown regional firestorm.
Let's move on to Section 3, 2026's biggest global flashpoints.
Now that we've looked at the Middle East, we really need to zoom out and look at the whole, highly fragmented globe. The Council on Foreign Relations tracks where the absolute biggest threats to international stability are in 2026, and they divide them up into this really fascinating hierarchy. In Tier 1, meaning high likelihood and high impact, we obviously see the grinding Russia-Ukraine war. But look closely at what is sitting right next to it, the rising potential for severe domestic unrest within the United States. That is a massive, frankly shocking insight. Political polarization and internal instability inside a global superpower are now ranked right alongside active, bloody ground wars when we talk about global threat levels. Meanwhile, over in Tier 2, we have moderate impact threats, like a crisis in the Taiwan Strait or the really dangerous possibility of renewed military clashes between India and Pakistan. It just shows that the map of global instability is complex, it's overlapping, and it's highly, highly volatile.
All right, let's pivot to Section 4, Tech Transforming Modern Warfare.
So we have to look at the actual mechanics of these conflicts. How are the hard military lessons learned in 2025 redefining the actual tools of war in 2026? Well, a fundamental shift is happening right above us. Traditional air superiority used to be all about aircraft count and standard missile defense systems. But today, the airspace is absolutely saturated with unmanned drone swarms. And shooting down a $1,000 drone with a $1 million traditional missile? Yeah, that simply isn't cost-effective. It literally bankrupts a military. Because of that, victory in 2026 requires absolute control of the electromagnetic spectrum. Militaries have had to pivot to focus heavily on electronic jamming and directed energy weapons, think high-powered lasers, just to survive in these drone-saturated environments.
And this technological leap is pushing warfare into entirely new, invisible domains. The battlefield is no longer just land, sea, and air. For sure, we are seeing the active militarization of space, where hacking or blinding a single satellite can instantly paralyze an enemy's logistics. Down below us, undersea communication cables are now prime military targets. Get this, those deep-sea cables carry 99% of international digital traffic. That means the very internet connection you're using right now to watch this explainer is actively being targeted by submarines and deep-sea drones. Crazy, right? On top of that, AI is being heavily used for predictive targeting. To manage this whole new reality, militaries are totally overhauling their ranks to create what they call techno-commanders. These are leaders who specialize not in standard infantry tactics, but in advanced cyber and space warfare.
To fuel this desperate high-tech arms race, nations are adopting a strategy called civil-military fusion, or CMF. Now, this concept is absolutely vital if you want to understand 2026. It represents the complete blurring of the lines between everyday civilian tech sectors and wartime security. Governments are aggressively taking civilian innovations, things like AI, commercial robotics, quantum computing, and using them to rapidly modernize their militaries. Why should you care about this? Because the everyday tech being built to make our phones smarter or our package deliveries faster is essentially being drafted into national security. What used to be a harmless little civilian startup today could easily be the absolute backbone of a nation's defense tomorrow.
And that leads us perfectly into our fifth and final section, weaponizing the global economy.
We're transitioning now to what might actually be the most insidious and pervasive battlefield of all, the everyday economic networks that connect our whole globalized world. This brings us to a defining term for 2026, weaponized interdependence. It's a bit of academic jargon, but the concept is fascinating. Nations have realized they don't always need to fire a physical missile to cripple an adversary. Instead, they are exploiting their central positions in global economic networks, supply chains, and data flows to just force compliance. Think of it like a chokehold. If you control the one bridge that supplies a town, well, you control the town. Countries are using the very interconnections of our globalized world as highly effective, invisible weapons.
And this isn't just theory. It's a constant game of action and reaction playing out right now. For example, China has weaponized its near monopoly over rare earth supplies, placing strategic export bans on really vital, simple things like microchips and drone components. And without those chips, foreign production lines literally just grind to a halt. Meanwhile, the US and its allies are heavily leveraging their control over global financial networks, like SWIFT, to instantly freeze assets and lock their adversaries totally out of the global banking system. Western nations are even using their dominance in maritime insurance to enforce policies on global shipping. Simply denying an insurance policy to a cargo ship can effectively blockade a country's exports. These quiet, bureaucratic actions, just the stroke of a pen, can cripple a nation just as effectively as a traditional bombing campaign.
When you step back and look at this broader picture, a pretty profound irony emerges. Like this quote says, countries that have long relied on openness and interconnectedness in global supply chains find themselves increasingly vulnerable. The whole promise of globalization was that being interconnected makes us all safer, richer, and more peaceful. But that idea? It's been turned entirely on its head. Today, that exact openness is what makes nations vulnerable to coercion. It's forcing countries worldwide into this frantic scramble to invest in sovereign, independent capabilities, just desperately trying to untangle themselves and reduce their reliance on everybody else.
So as we watch conflicts evolve from the devastating physical reality of Gaza to these new invisible cyber realms, and ultimately into the very supply chains and financial networks that keep our lights on, we really have to ask ourselves, in a weaponized global economy, is any nation truly secure? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this helped you see the invisible threads connecting our world right now. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.